But I do think we need to start with the biggest news of the week, and that is the news pertaining to Dana White and his current status within the sport, within the UFC, and his future within the sport and the UFC. Of course, by now you all know that on late Monday night, close to 8 p.m. Eastern time, a video surfaced courtesy of TMZ of Dana White getting into an argument with his wife, Anne, of almost 30 years. She slaps him, he slaps her back, and it appears as though he slaps her again. And there's a bit of a, altercation, if you will, physical, and then the clip ends. In that same post, there is an interview with Dana White conducted by TMZ, Harvey Levin, the owner, and another employee of TMZ, where they talk about him, and he apologizes and says he's embarrassed. Since then, not much word from A, Dana White, B, the UFC, C, Endeavor. People want to group ESPN into this conversation, and we can discuss whether or not that is fair, but there hasn't been much word. Of course, the timing of this all, horrendous. It's never a good time to do this, but can't help but notice that Dana White has been heavily involved in the promotion and the launch of this new slap fighting organization that was scheduled to debut on TBS on January 11th, which is next Wednesday. Now, the latest news on that is last night on AEW programming, which would be the lead-in show for that on Wednesdays on Dynamite. They had been promoting slap fighting for several weeks on AEW. Last night, there was no mention of slap fight. You go on the TBS website, all the links to slap fight are dead, and reports are starting to trickle in that it's no longer on the schedule for next week. Shout out to Front Office Sports, AJ Perez, for that. So we'll see if slap fighting is, a casualty, for lack of a better word, in this whole situation. So there it is. And of course, yesterday on the show, I talked about it, but I have more that I want to say about it. But I would love to obviously talk to you guys about it and get your thoughts, because I have not heard your thoughts other than, some tweets here and there. Chuck, your thoughts on, take this any way you want, on the video, on the reaction to the video, the defense of the video, what should, we're going to get into all of this. Take it away.
Well, man, I mean, I've been able to check out like what you've said. I saw the Morning Combat guys were talking about it. Very few, it's kind of crazy though to me. I saw Dan Le Batard, had his thoughts on it. I'm guessing he probably contacted you too to get on that show.
I was on the show this morning.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's you've got some voices that are mentioning this, but I think that my initial reaction was, I don't know if I can break the fourth wall. Like you sent it, the way I saw it was you sent it to us in a text. And I was like, oh, Jesus, what is going on here, man? And you see it. And my immediate thing is not shock, nothing like that, because I think when it's like you said with the Denny Green thing, like it's, who Dana White is. It's not like this is a shocking thing to see him, do something like this for whatever reason. It's not like you're immune to seeing it, but you're immune to Dana White in a weird way, just being a bully, right? Like, and being a guy who's going to, not stand for, he's not going to stand for stuff like that. And it's one of those types of situations where I was looking at the piece, like the whole package of this thing, the video, and I'm like, why is this not a big deal? Like, I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm like, this is not a big deal. Like, this seems like my very first thing is like, this is huge. What is going on? This is gonna, this could be disastrous for the UFC. This could be disastrous for lots of things that are going on. But I'm looking at the soft landing spot that he's on, like in the way that it's being talked about, the soft language and all that stuff. And it was very confusing, man. I got to be honest. I was like, what is up with that? It was the juxtaposition of tones. You're watching something that's startling, and then you're looking at something that they're softening it. And immediately I had to kind of like step away from for a second and like think about that. And as it kind of dawned on me, like, dude, this is bad. I mean, it's just a bad look. I'm with you though. And we can get into any thought you want on this, but I'm with you when you know who they are, right? I wasn't shocked. It wasn't shock that got me. It was just like, oh, this might be the thing. This might be the thing that actually overthrows this guy. This might be the thing that, brings everything down on him. And it was crazy because on Monday night, obviously the Monday Night Football game happens. And all of the attention goes to the poor kid Hamlin, you know, who's on the field, and all the attention kind of went that direction. And I was, you know, it was such a bizarre moment, because in the back of your mind, you're also thinking, man, Dana is kind of floating under this whole thing. Like, now there's a whole different news story going on. He's kind of floating through this, and I wasn't sure. I wouldn't have been surprised if nobody, other than maybe us and like certain shows, would talk about it. I was like, who's going to do it? Looking at ESPN, looking at all that stuff, it's weird, man. It just shines such a weird light on the sport. You know, the reaction, the puff piece that Kevin Iole wrote. I was just like, it makes, you know, you mentioned this too, like, it makes you feel like the sport you've kind of given your life to, you know, your livelihood, your career, is in its own way just such a mess, such a dysfunctional mess at times. And it's so below the radar of you know, legitimate sports attention or legitimate news outlets and stuff like that, that you see stuff like this and you're just, I don't know, it makes you go very introspective about everything within the sport itself. You know what I mean? From the coverage to the man who's been, you know, the people shill over to this day, who runs the company, and just everything else. So it's been a very strange couple of days, and I've been, you know, I'm trying to check out as much as I can, and I was excited to talk to you guys about it today, because you had a platform yesterday, but this is the first I've had a chance to talk about it. So I was glad that this kind of coincided, at least.
I've been shocked with the reaction to it. I'm baffled by what I've seen in terms of Ioli's piece the other day. I made 2 paragraphs into that. And then I see Stephen A. Smith on ESPN, you know, prefacing what he's going to say about, I've let him know I'm going to be on the show talking about him. I love him. He's a leader of men, was said at one stage during it. I mean, even by reacting to this on Twitter, the replies to the tweets were just all she hit him first, which is absolute bullshit. Like, it is not an excuse. I don't know when that became a thing that people said like that's the way this plays out. It shouldn't. And really what I'm looking at when I'm seeing all this stuff is something I've talked to you guys a lot about in terms of the perception of MMA over here compared to the US. Over here, you know, MMA has negative stigma attached to it anyway. During the pandemic, a Thai fighter got into an incident in Dublin City, and someone put in the replies, "Oh, he's an MMA guy," and everyone's like, "Oh, of course, yeah, this is the way these people carry on." And Dana White doing this and doing it on camera, it perpetuates that stigma. It perpetuates that negative image of the sport and what it is. And based on what I was seeing, you know, this sport doesn't have a great culture around it. Like, we have great people in here, amazing people with great knowledge of the sport, but I don't know. I just feel as though allowing this to go, and that TMZ interview being basically the UFC's press release on the whole issue, is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, no other sport in the world, right? FIFA aren't, you know, they're not the bastions of morality or anything like that. But the president of FIFA is being dragged up and down by the media of that sport for having a guy he knows that owns a restaurant, Salt Bay, on the field during the World Cup final. Like, he is being eviscerated. And I woke up on Tuesday and I looked around Twitter and I looked up to some media people, and it was, for the most part, blanket silence. And that's a toxic environment. And I think, look, I'm with you guys. I don't think anything's going to happen here. And based on what I'm seeing in the replies, based on what I'm seeing on ESPN, it makes me feel that even more. It feels like they're trying their best to make this go away. But I don't know what it says for the future of the sport if this goes unpunished, at least to some degree.
You know, one thing that really irks me is when you see all the coverage, especially on the friendly media, i.e. ESPN, you see First Take, you see the banner that they use, the graphics that they use. It's all entitled Dana White Apologizes. Look at it. It says Dana White apologizes. Mm-hmm. Dana White apologizing isn't the news. Dana White striking his wife in public on camera is the news. The apology is the aftermath, but you're bearing the lead if you're leading with the apology. And they're doing that, obviously, to sugarcoat. I've been in those walls. And I have also said, as recently this morning, that I see a lot of people I see a lot of people criticizing ESPN on ESPN. You can criticize their coverage, whether it's soft, whether it's too light, whether it's non-existent. We should not be looking to ESPN for some sort of punishment, some sort of statement. We should not be looking to ESPN to reprimand Dana White. He does not work for ESPN. ESPN doesn't own the UFC. So I don't understand this thing. Now I understand that people view them kind of one and the same in the sense that they are the main broadcaster, and also their business relationship with the UFC is actually deeper than their business relationship with the likes of the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, because they sell pay-per-views as well, right? Like they actually ask people to pay for the content. That being said, they're not the owners of the UFC. They're just the broadcaster, and and as they mentioned very quickly, we don't produce the content, which of course is hogwash. They're in business with them. Like, come on, you're profiting off of them. Who I'm waiting for, and it's Thursday at 1:25 p.m. Eastern. I just want to know what Endeavor feels about it. I want to know what the parent. Trust me, I ain't waiting for a statement from the UFC, right? I ain't waiting for a statement on their Twitter or on their social media like every other sports league on the planet would do, right? Because they never do that. They never do that about anything. They've never done that. They've never been that kind of entity. They're the kind of entity that just hopes for things to go away. But what about Endeavor? What about the publicly traded company? What about the likes of Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell? What about Ari Emanuel, who has been very vocal about the likes of Kanye West and Saudi Arabia and pulling out of those deals and saying, we're not going to take that money and we have a moral compass and all that stuff. Now, William Morris Endeavor now, they have long been the agents of the UFC and Dana White. They are, they're in bed, they're friends, they represent him. So it's a conflict, right? Like he works for them, he gets paid by them, but they're programmed to protect him, right? To serve him, to represent him. And so that's why I don't think anything is going to happen. The only chance that something happens, and we'll talk about whether or not we want something to happen, think it's going to happen, whatever. The only chance something really happens here is A, if the stock plummets, right? And it dipped for a little bit, but then it went back up. So they're not really losing money, at least now. And then B, if they're losing out on financial transactions, right? TBS pulls out a slap. All right, that's a bad thing. We still got the UFC. That was a new thing anyway. But then what if, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out. A blue chip spot, a Monster says no mas, right? A DraftKings says no mas. Then something happens. You think that happens, Chuck?
I'm with you, man. I'm like, I don't really think much happens. But then again, I try to imagine what, let's just say that they're like, well, let's just let time, news cycles pass through and we start to forget or whatever they're thinking. Let time heal this wound. Will it? I mean, this is like the Ray Rice thing in the sense that we've seen it. It's not like this is just some people reporting on, I saw this happen, or speculation that, whatever. Like we actually have seen this happen. It's a clip that will live forever. And I think he acknowledged that, right? I'm just wondering, can it proceed? You know what I mean? Like, can it proceed as normal? I don't want to like discount the demographic to the point where I'm like, dude, they'll just overlook this. Obviously, the combat sports space is different. You know what I mean? Like the fan base is a lot different than you get in other sports. And if there's going to be a bunch of people willing to just keep going as we're going and not even worry about it, it might be combat sports. But I can't imagine that it's going to be the same after this. And that's where I'm like, what's going to happen though? How's it? Who's going to do that? Like, who's going to govern the situation? Who can even reprimand him? Who is you know what I mean? Like,
who's the adult
not insubordinate
in the room, right?
to anybody? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those type of things. And it's almost like it's going to have to be semi-voluntary. I can't imagine that either. You know what I mean? I can't imagine Dana taking himself out of action or reprimanding himself in some meaningful way. I can't imagine that either. So honestly, man, I just don't know. I have to shrug my shoulders and just watch it unfold. Like you, I keep looking also for the Endeavor or something like that, like some kind of statement. And then maybe you can start to wrap your mind around how it might play out. But until that happens, man, I don't know.
What do you think, PT?
I'm just going back to a point that you made moments ago. I wasn't looking for a statement from ESPN. Like, I mean, that's the last of the people that we're trying to hear from here. But I do think that Stephen A had a responsibility in that spot to cover this situation correctly. Like, I'm not trying to say like we should have got a press release from that situation, but if you are put on a show to speak about this situation that's unfolded, and I've seen how they speak about football players that this happens. I've seen how they speak about these other people. That makes no sense. That reaction is just crazy to me. And this guy is respected. This guy is one of the biggest names in punditry. Like, he is covering every sport. He's covering MMA.
He is number one.
Yeah.
He is the 2023 version of Howard Cosell in today's sports landscape.
It's glaring, glaring subjectivity for award-winning, you know, place that is supposed to be gilding the fact, right? Like, it's supposed to be all about like the news and reporting. It's just glaring subjectivity, like where they're choosing, like you said, burying the lead. That's the responsibility of ESPN, is to tell you the truth. That should be the responsibility of a news outlet, you know. So that's where they're failing the situation. And then if they're protecting the, you know, Dana White, what is that saying about ESPN? Now, I know that I've worked there too. I mean, I understand kind of how it's run over there, but this is a bad look for them. It's a bad look for everybody, right? I mean, it kind of extends to so many other sectors of what you're looking at, including the coverage. And I think, you know, you could go down the list of like the reporting on MMA. This is one of those moments where you shine a light into the dark spaces of of what's going on in the coverage itself too. So, but man, it is. I think that's what bothers me about ESPN. It's like, dude, like you said, the first piece that came out should have had the appropriate headline. At least it should have at least told you what was going on, and then the subsequent stuff could have, you know, if they want to spin then, but you have to report it first, right? Like, you have to report it the way it happened.
I was very, very, very disappointed in the coverage on First Take, and I've said this in the past. I said it this morning. Stephen A. has been nothing but a gentleman to me, has always been kind, and I hate media criticism in public. I'm not that kind of guy, and I don't love to see anyone do it, and I don't like to partake in it. And I've known Molly Karen for a very long time too. I worked with her at Versus 11 or so years ago. But to see that, to your point, PT, knowing how honest they are, knowing how hard they go when it's someone else, even when it's someone who they have relationships with. Like, you see them go hard on Kevin Durant when he doesn't show up, let alone a Kyrie Irving, let alone a Ray Rice, right? You see how hard they go. And then you see this, where there's footage and it's puppy dog faces. He's a great guy. He's got a great family, and we wish the best for them. Like,
he knows he did wrong, victim. You know.
And you know what's the one that really got me? I don't judge someone, as Molly said, in their lowest moment. That's all that we do. We judge them in their highs and we judge them in their lows. Sure. What do you mean you don't judge them in their lowest moment? So, like, take the MMA world. When John Jones does something, do we not judge him? Do we not talk about it? When Conor McGregor does something, do we not judge him? Do we not talk about it? When Ray Lewis does something, do they not judge him? Do they not talk about it? Name a guy, right? When Kobe Bryant had his issue, did they not judge him? Did they not talk about it? What are you talking about? We don't judge someone. We don't talk about it in their lowest moment. I mean, talk about giving someone a pass, and talk about letting the world know that, you know, if you're our pal, we're going to give you a pass. Here's the bottom line. And this is something that I have felt from day one. MMA is the vice of the sports world. We're not even boxing. We're the fun thing that you do with your friends on a Saturday night. You get your beer, you get your wings, you get your little bets in, and then you go back to the real world on Sunday or Monday and you talk about the real stuff. The NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. MMA is the fun weekend in Las Vegas with your boys. You do not treat it the same. That's what mainstream media does. That's what the mainstream sports media does. They don't view us like the NFL. They don't view Dana White as Roger Goodell. We always try to make that analogy. He's not even James Dolan to them. He's not even freaking Jerry Jones. He's not Mark Cuban to them. They're the fun thing that they get tickets to and get to sit in the front row and get to hobnob with the celebrities and the big time fighters. That's it. So because of that, they do not hold the sport to the same standard that we do. This is our livelihood. We are as entrenched in this game as they are. So we look at the sport the same way soccer pundit X looks at soccer, the way NFL pundit X, you know what I mean? We love the sport. We view it. We hold it in the highest regard. We hold the fighters in the highest regard, right? They don't. So I'm not looking to them, but I'm not searching this. I'm not seeking, but I got to say, when you watch that, you're like, golly, they're just giving this guy a pass, when every week we hear them screaming at the top of their lungs with the veins popping out of their neck about the most mundane bullshit things. And now this, and then we hear, let's not forget, she hit him first. Can we talk about this now?
Oh my God.
Can we talk about this, guys?
God,
can we talk about the he was hit first brigade? And can we talk about how pathetic it is to see people trip over themselves to defend a guy who isn't even defending himself, who isn't even offering excuses himself? Credit to him if you want to give him that credit. Can we talk about the fighters who he could not care less, who he would pass, like he has no idea who half of these people are, who are in comments, who are on Twitter being like, whoa, play dirty games, get dirty back, whatever the fuck they say. What about this?
Don't marry those dudes, Jesus.
By the way, who knew? I didn't even know that these people existed. I didn't even know that there were people who thought that if a woman slapped you, it was okay to slap her back.
Right.
It's unbelievable. And like, first of all, let's not, I don't know if we want to name the fighters that we saw sticking up for him, but did they realize if they were in that exact same situation, they'd be Luis Pena? They would be the laundry list of people that have been booted out the door because they don't matter to him at the end of the day. He is thrown lads under the bus. Like, I don't want to get into specific cases, even sometimes where there wasn't a situation. He has tried to make out like these people have done something terrible. If they did that same thing that Dana did, they'd already be gone. And look, if you want to do the equivalency debate, like for like, all right, that his wife is about 110 pounds, 120 pounds. He's 250 pounds and, seems to be on some additional supplements. You know what I mean? This guy is huge.
Admittedly, I think he's admittedly on. Yeah.
I mean, and it's we don't have a clear footage. It doesn't seem to be one for one for me. If you want to debate this kind of shit, like it is completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And I just, that's what worries me. Seeing these people, that was the most replies I got from the tweet where I kind of said, look, this is reprehensible behavior. And I questioned the TMZ thing. Most of the comments were, bro, she hit him first. Oh, sorry. I take it back. I didn't realize. Jesus Christ.
It's so patently absurd. I mean, first of all, the idea that you retaliate, like if your wife, right, like has a moment where she slaps you and your first reaction without hesitation, especially when you have been preaching that you never lay hands on a woman, your first reaction is not to assess, is not to do anything. It is literally to retaliate and throw a counter, and then try it again. It looked like he was still trying to, to hit her again. It's just, that's indefensible, man. I'm sorry, man. If you can't take a slap for something that's going on, first of all, it looked like he was trying to grab her wrists and stuff beforehand. Who knows what the context is of this situation? But, he looks like Dana White. I mean, that's what he looks like Dana White trying to control a situation, and he takes a slap. Now, how often does this happen? I have no clue. You know what I mean? Like, they're saying that this is a first incident. That seems far-fetched that somebody caught it, caught this very first instance in 30-year marriage. It's crazy to me, but I think it's the zero hesitation, just right back. I mean, that's just, it's indefensible. Anybody who's saying that, I'm like, it makes you really ponder, those people themselves. Yeah. I mean, you're like, come on, man. Like, really, this would be your response?
I mean,
you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy.
You can't help but let your mind go and say, like, what else is going on, right? What else is happening? It was so quick. It was so disturbing. And then to see people come to his defense when, again, this man himself isn't even defending it. This man himself has been quoted multiple times. The most famous one back in 2014 saying, you don't bounce back from hitting a woman. This man himself, you are defending someone who isn't defending himself. Why? He is not even offering up that excuse. Now, he says he's embarrassed. He says he's apologizing. He said that, they're moving past it. Yet, someone sends me a screen grab because I'm blocked and be like, does this look like a man who's embarrassed? This morning, he's with one of the Nelk boys at the casino showing off how much money they made. Does that look to me? Does that look to you like someone who's embarrassed? Multiple days. What are we, 2-3 days post incident, 4 or 5 days max? God forbid any of us were involved in a situation like this. We'd be in a hole. God forbid any of us were involved in a situation like this. We'd be fired. God forbid any of us, especially me, did something like this. What do you think Dana White would be saying about us, about the MMA media, right?